Today, it's time for another one of those chatty videos, one in which I do not have a script or anything. I just want to sit down here and chat with you casually about some photographs. In this video, I want to go over some photos I made back in March, I believe. I went out to do a portrait session with two friends. As you might know, I do not often do portraits. It's actually really rare that I do portraits, so that's why I think it's all the more interesting and exciting actually to reflect on these images, because it's just not the genre I usually do. But I have to say, the process was really fun and I'm really satisfied with the results actually. You might remember some of the photos I'm going to show you today because I briefly showed them in a previous video in which I went out to shoot a roll of Kodak T-Max 400. And these photos now are also shot with Kodak T-Max 400. It was the first ever roll of that film actually. And I want to start off with this photo here. To be honest, I want to start with it because it's my favorite photo. I think it's my favorite. It's really hard to say which is my favorite, but this is definitely one of the top tier photos in my personal opinion. I really like it. It's just got this really wide feel to it because Anna, the model, is just in this park, which is completely empty, and I've got so much of the park around her in the frame. By the way, I was shooting with the Pentax K1000 with an 18 to 28mm lens attached, so all the portraits are really wide angle, some of them really wide. I don't remember how many millimeters I exactly had here, but it does look pretty wide angle, so it probably was towards the 18mm. Yeah, and I just really like the effect, having her so small in this scene, which has a strange, I wouldn't say lifeless, but it does have a strange feeling to it because it's a park and usually you would think that there are kids around and parents watching their kids or chatting with other parents. But in this case, it's just completely empty and just her standing on this, I don't know exactly what it is. And as always, leave your thoughts in the comments if you have any thoughts or any opinions that you would like to share. I always really look forward to reading all of your thoughts, so feel free to share anything you think of. Let's continue with this photo, which I also think is quite cool. I wouldn't say it's one of my favorites, but I think it turned out quite nicely. Already while looking through the viewfinder, I thought this looks quite promising because I liked the big city mood it has. Although we're still just in Salzburg, which is a fairly small town actually, this wall behind her that goes to the back feels big. Maybe because it reminds me of Vienna, which is definitely a good portion bigger than Salzburg. And I like her pose and just the expression she has, quite neutral I would say, but I actually quite like neutral expressions when for portraits. It's got so much negative space actually, but I think it looks really good. And also I'm slightly surprised that I'm fond of the composition, seeing as the leading lines actually lead to the back and there is nothing at the back because the subject is at the front, but I think it still works, as if the leading lines were leading from the back to the front or something. I don't know exactly what it is, but I think it works. I really like it. Then, speaking of leading lines, this next photo has a lot of them. We just came out of this tunnel and I really liked all the leading lines and thought it'd be cool to have Anna stand right in the center where all the lines come together, and I think it works beautifully. First of all, we've got all the leading lines, which all just lead to her being the main focus of the photo, which works beautifully, I think. And also we have this subframe going on with the tunnel ending here. The only thing that might be a little strange is that she's completely to the side of that subframe, but I still think it works because of all the leading lines that still lead you to her. The only thing I do not like so much about it is that she is in the dark, which is natural because all the light comes from behind and we just came out of the tunnel, and from the tunnel there's just no light really shining onto her face. So that's why she's completely dark, but it doesn't really damage the photo in my opinion. It still is a cool photograph, I think. It's just that maybe if we would have had some light on her, it might be cooler. I don't know. I'd have to try it out. This one is pretty cool, I think, but also just not at all one of my favorites. I like her pose and how she's casually leaning on that moped, but the background's a little random. That lamp at the top is a little distracting. The windows are alright. I actually think they add some interest to the background because just white would be a little boring. I don't know what it is, but it's just not very fitting. It's not a very pleasing background. And also there's that second moped to the right of the image. If that wouldn't be there, I think it would be better. So the foreground of this photo works beautifully in my opinion, and the background is the problem, which just doesn't make it that good. Ooh, this photo is also one of my favorites. Again, Anna is super small in the photo and we've got this wide scene around her, and I guess you can already assume that that's the kind of thing I like. I don't exactly know why, but I find it very pleasing that we clearly have a subject, but this subject is quite small and we actually have not a landscape, but a cityscape, I don't know, a street photo. And it's so wide, I believe this was on 18mm. And I love how wide it is. We've got the whole building in the photo, which is beautiful, I think. And we see both the streets. One thing I really dislike about this photo are all the people, especially on the right-hand side. There's so many people which are all just a distraction. I think it would work better, the photo, without them. Also, of course, the cars on the left all parked there are somewhat distracting. The photo would just overall be far more intriguing if everything would be empty and just Anna would be standing in the middle there. But still, nevertheless, I like it a lot actually. Maybe I like the idea of what it could be, and just what it became is not as good as the idea, but I still like it a lot. Then, moving on to the next photo, as you can see, still keeping it very wide angle here. And here again, I was thinking it'd be cool to have her in the light in the foreground, and in the background, because of the roof, it was supposed to get much darker. It is pretty dark, and I think it actually works quite well since she is much brighter than the background. But I was actually imagining it to be even darker, but that didn't quite work out. I still think the photo works, although I have to say I don't really like it particularly. It just overall isn't that interesting. Maybe it would have been more interesting if I would have gotten closer and had her much bigger in frame. Especially on the left side, we've got this slight distraction from the next building that we can see, and in the background we've got this opening to the next street, which isn't so distracting. It would be very distracting if a person would be walking through there, but still, I don't know, if it would have been a completely dark background, if it would have been closed back there, I can imagine it would look better. So yeah, it's a decent photo I would say, but definitely not so far up on my favorites list. Then, this photo is one of the very few, if not maybe even the only one, that is vertical. I mostly shoot horizontal photos, but in this case, for obvious reasons I guess, I thought it would be very fitting to have a vertical photo. I was down low and Anna was standing up there, and I really enjoy the leading lines from the building. I think again it's really cool to have all the sky and that building included in the photo, and just have this whole surrounding included into the portrait and not have it too concentrated only on her, even though she is still very clearly recognizable as the subject. However, I do have to say her face overall is a little too dark. It's getting a little too shadowy. I still like it a lot actually. Also, it's just a little detail, but that light on her shoe at the front looks really cool. Oh, then this photo is also pretty high on my favorites list. I just think it works. It's beautiful. We've got this huge subframe, you could say, with the square, and then we've got her in the sunlight, clearly visible as the subject. And one detail that I really appreciate is her shadow on the right side in that white space of the wall there, as if that were a frame for her shadow. It just works perfectly. I really appreciate how coincidentally the sun was in the perfect position here, and I think this photo works beautifully. Also, I like the shadow through her face. I don't know if some people might think it's annoying, but I actually really enjoy it. I just think it adds some interest to the play of light and shadow. And yeah, no, I really like this photo. So here's the next photo. We are back at the park, and you have to know, I'm really not experienced in directing models, and I don't really know if I could actually do it. In this case, I didn't do any directing for the model. Anna was super independent and just did all the poses herself, and I always appreciated the poses. I thought the poses were really cool. And so she just did this and I said, yeah, that's cool, I'll shoot in. I never really directed anything, even though I think as a decent portrait photographer you probably need to have certain directing skills and communication skills to communicate the poses that you want to see to your model. In my case, I lack both. I can't communicate it, but also I have nothing to communicate because I don't know what kind of poses I would want to see. And so I was really lucky to be able to shoot with Anna, who is just super independent, and I really enjoyed the poses she did. And also in this case, it's so simple, but I think it works. And I like how she just leans her head back to the camera and just looks at it. I think it's cool. Then let's move on to this photo, which is also pretty high on my list of favorite photos. I feel like I've been saying this way too often and there are way too many photos on that ranking, but I just really like this photo for multiple reasons. Firstly, I think the position I found for Anna was quite cool on this slide because the slide is so bright and it adds, I wouldn't say a subframe, but something like it. Like you're pulled to the slide because it's so bright and she's on that slide. I just really like also the parallels, meaning on the left side we've got this thing to walk up to the slide, and then we've got the slide extended by her leg and just builds this triangle kind of thing. And now, finally, this is the last photo I have to show you from the portrait session. I think it's an okay photo. I really enjoy the light that she has on her face, just halving her face in light and shadow. But overall, the background's a little too busy for my taste, maybe. Or maybe it's not the busy background that I don't like, because many of the shots I do like also had busy backgrounds. Maybe just the background is boring. I don't know. I can't really tell. Anyway, that concludes the portrait session, and now looking back at the session and reflecting on the images I got, I've kind of found a motivation to do some more portraits. I really do portraits much too rarely, but as said, Anna made the job so easy because she was so independent. Maybe that's why it was so fun, because that's the one thing that scares me when I think of portrait photography, is to get the model and the photograph to work well together. And especially the model is difficult because I'm just too inexperienced in directing. Of course, experience will only come from actually doing it. So I guess I'll have to just do some portraits sometime soon. And also, I'm really happy about the lens I chose for this session, that I chose the 18 to 28mm, because I think it's really cool to just add so much environment to a portrait. I really enjoyed making these, and now looking back at these, I'm quite happy with the results. Not all of them worked, for example this last one, but many did, and I think I would like to try that in nature at some point, because maybe in nature the overall environment is more tidy than in the city where there's so many cars parked in the background or people walking around, whereas imagine being on a wide field. Maybe something in that way, just with an actual model. And then, yeah, I've just got that problem of needing to direct that model. So that's it for this week. I hope this was in any way entertaining for you and you enjoyed the video. As said, leave your thoughts in the comments below. I always happily read through them. And also, you can leave your thoughts on this format, because I'm a little unsure about this chatty format because it's so unpolished compared to my normal videos, which are scripted and therefore just far more fluent in a way. But at the moment, my time schedule is just so tight that it really helps me to every now and then do these chatty videos, which just don't take as much time to make in comparison to those more polished videos. So if you absolutely hate it, write it in the comments and then I'll know, and then I'll have to think of something else. But I hope you do kind of enjoy this, because every now and then it really helps me out when time is a little close. So yeah, I'll stop rambling and I'll see you again next week. Goodbye.